We the public know only 25% of what investigators actually know in this case. That is not a guess. That is not speculation from an internet forum. That comes directly from a retired police sergeant with decades of law enforcement experience who has been studying this investigation from the inside out. 25%. Which means 75% of what the FBI and the Pima County Sheriff's Office know about what happened to Nancy Guthrie on the night of January 31st has never been made public. Not to the media, not to the internet, not to the 50,000 people who have called in tips. 75% of this investigation is happening in rooms the public will never see. And what that retired sergeant revealed about what is inside those rooms will change how you see this entire case. If you are new to the Crime Journal, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. We are not stopping until Nancy Guthrie gets justice, 115 days. That is how long Nancy Guthrie has been missing. And the question sitting at the center of everything right now is the same question it has been from day one. Are investigators actually getting closer? Or is the public being managed while the real work happens somewhere out of sight? Sheriff Nanos spoke exclusively to People magazine, and here is what he said. My team, I have said all along they are going to solve this. I fully 100% believe that. Strong words. But retired police sergeant Troy Hillman, a man who spent decades inside law enforcement and solved one of Arizona's most terrifying cold cases, heard those words and said something that puts everything in perspective. He said we probably know 25% of what they know, and that is by design. Let that land for a moment. Everything you have seen, every expert panel, every news report, every YouTube video including this one, all of it is built on 25% of the actual picture. The other 75% is sitting in evidence rooms in Quantico in sealed court documents and in the minds of investigators who are legally and strategically required to stay silent. Hillman was clear about why. If investigators were to leak who the perpetrator was, that person might be confronted by a member of the public, and that would create a dangerous situation. The silence is not incompetence. The silence is protection. Protection of the investigation. Protection of the evidence. And protection of the courtroom case that is being built one careful piece at a time. Now here is the detail from Sheriff Nanos's People magazine interview that tells you exactly how complex this investigation has become. He said there are thousands and thousands of videos out there from intersections and ring cameras that investigators have to catalog. Maybe all the white trucks go over here. All the red sedans go over there. You have to have it so that when you do find a suspect, you can go back and say what else to know about that person. What vehicles do they drive? What cell phone number do they use? You work backwards from the suspect to the evidence you already have. Hillman added critical context to this. He spent 3.5 years on a cold case group solving what became known as the Canal murders. They had around 1,000 tips on their list, going through each one, vetting suspects, deciding who was worth pursuing for DNA, who was worth dismissing. The Nancy Guthrie investigation has 50,000 tips. 50,000. Some of them are completely useless. But some of them have what Hillman called meat. Real information from real people who saw something real. And buried somewhere inside those 50,000 tips, Hillman believes what Robbie Mayer also believes. The suspect's name is already in there, waiting for the right investigator to turn over the right rock. Now let us talk about the DNA. Because this is where Sheriff Nanos said something that has not received nearly enough attention. He told People magazine, I know we have DNA that is unknown who the contributor or depositor is, but I think they are getting closer to finding out who that was. When the labs tell us, hey, there is nothing else we can do well, then maybe we have got a problem. We have got a cold case. But right now the labs are not telling us that. Hillman heard that and said something important. Never give up. Where there are new advances and new techniques, all you need is one little morsel of information to lead you in a certain direction, and then the whole case could unravel. You could solve it overnight from a single thread. That is the forensic reality of this case right now. Genetic genealogy is actively underway at Quantico, the same technology that identified the Golden State Killer after 40 years. The same technology that put the Long Island serial killer in a courtroom. It works. It is slow. And it is working. Now here is the question that's been sitting underneath this entire investigation, and nobody has answered it clearly enough. Did Porch Guy act alone, or was this a coordinated operation? Hillman looked at the doorbell footage and said something that cuts right to the heart of it. He called Porch Guy Jr. Varsity, his exact words. Looking at the video, if that truly was the abductor, it looked kind of junior varsity in terms of the stuff he was wearing, how he was wearing things, the holster, the gloves trying to cover the camera. Junior varsity. That is the assessment of a man who spent decades studying criminals. Someone who came prepared in some ways but executed the plan, like someone who had never done something like this before. Someone who watched too many movies, put together a costume, and showed up to do a job he probably did not fully understand. But here is what Hillman kept coming back to. The motive. He said when he looks at this case, he keeps coming back to Savannah Guthrie. Not to blame her, not to accuse her, but because the motive for targeting Nancy specifically, an 84-year-old woman in a quiet neighborhood, almost certainly connects to Savannah's fame, her wealth, and her public profile. Savannah Guthrie is on an international stage in millions of people's living rooms and kitchens every single morning. People feel like they know her. Some people feel like they have a grievance with her. And her mother's home address her routine, her vulnerabilities. All of it was findable by someone determined enough to look. Now here is the question that Hillman said baffles him more than anything else. Nobody called in saying they recognized Porch Guy. Think about that. The footage has been seen by millions of people. You can see his eyebrows. You can see the way he walks. You can see specific details about his build and his posture and his movement patterns. And in 115 days, not a single person has called in and said, I know who that is. I recognize that walk. I recognize those eyebrows. Hillman said that to him speaks to one specific possibility. He is not from this area. He traveled in, executed the job, and traveled out, which would explain why nobody in Tucson has recognized him. Because he is not someone Tucson has seen before. And that connects directly to something else Hillman raised. The surveillance that almost certainly happened before the abduction. Hillman believes whoever did this was watching Nancy Guthrie's home for days before February 1st, sitting in the surrounding bushes and trees, learning the routine, timing the schedule, identifying the cameras, mapping every entry and exit point. And if they were out there for days doing pre-surveillance, they were not invisible. They were in a neighborhood, people drive by, people walk dogs. People notice things they do not immediately connect to a crime. And somewhere in those 50,000 tips is almost certainly someone who noticed something in the days before February 1st that they have not yet realized is relevant. Now let us address the question that the entire country has been wrestling with. Is the Pima County Sheriff's Department equipped to handle an investigation of this scale? Hillman was fair but direct. He said he thinks Sheriff Nanos is genuinely a good person who is trying to do the right thing. But he also said that in hindsight, he would have handled the public communication differently. He would have kept his public statements at a higher level. He would have used experienced public information officers to manage the media. And he would have been more careful early on about how much information was released publicly. Because every detail released publicly sends the investigation down tunnels that cannot always be controlled. But he was also clear about something else. The criticism of the sheriff has to be balanced against the reality of what investigators are dealing with. Thousands of videos, 50,000 complex DNA evidence, a suspect who came prepared not to leave a trace, an FBI relationship that started with tension and had to be rebuilt. This is not a small-town mystery that should have been solved in a week. This is one of the most complex abduction cases in recent American history. And here is what Hillman said that gave the most honest picture of where this actually stands. He compared it to the Idaho 4 murders. In November 2022, 4 college students were killed, and the public was screaming at the Moscow Police Department demanding answers. Everyone was saying what is taking so long. And then a month later, investigators announced they had been tracking Brian Kohberger for weeks. They had the evidence. They had the case. They just could not tell anyone yet. Hillman believes the same dynamic may be at play here. The public is seeing 25%. The other 75% may already contain something the public will not know about until an arrest is made. He said it directly. They are working diligently. They have pulled in the resources they need. That has never been a question. The question is not whether they will solve it. The question is when. Hillman said something at the end of this conversation that stayed with everything. He said all you need is one little morsel, one piece of information that leads in a certain direction, and then the whole case unravels. He has seen it happen in investigations that went cold for years. The DNA catches up. The tip comes in. The person who has been carrying the secret for 115 days finally decides the weight of it is too heavy to keep carrying alone. That moment is coming. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old. She wore hearing aids during the day and took them out at night. She had dinner with her family on January 31st. She walked into her garage at 9:50 in the evening. And somewhere between that moment and 2:28 in the morning, a person who knew enough about her life to find her in the dark came for her. That person is somewhere right now, living an outwardly ordinary life, waking up every morning knowing what they did. And the 75% of this investigation that the public has never seen is quietly closing in around them. If you have any information at all, call 1-800-CALL-FBI immediately. The reward is $1.2 million. It is real. It is unclaimed. And someone out there knows something they have not said yet. Share this video right now. The more eyes on this case, the more pressure on everyone who knows where Nancy is. She deserves justice, and we are not stopping until she gets it.